Well, the content is not known because it hasn't been published yet. But of course, what has been negotiated is based on tax information exchange agreements, but goes beyond that also into a treaty that enables us to settle disputes as to where a taxpayer is resident for the purposes of normal understanding between tax officers. So this is what you would expect between frontier countries, by state countries, neighbors, to enable them to determine those who have activity in both sides should be taxed properly in one state or the other. So in that sense, it's very normal, it's very favorable, it's very forward-looking, and it's exactly what Gibraltar has been saying internationally for some time. You'll recall that I wrote to Mr. Montoro when he said that we were not willing to cooperate and we didn't provide information. And I said, well, we are willing to cooperate and we offer you the opportunity of having an agreement with us. And this is where we have got to, and I'm very pleased indeed.
Well, Chief Minister, excuse the cynicism, and of course there are people who don't necessarily trust Spain. You say the treaty will assist in the resolutions of disputes as to the proper tax residence of companies and individuals. What does Spain want to get out of this? There are many Gibraltarians who live in Spain with residency in Gibraltar. Is this aimed at tackling them?
So I'm a cynic when it comes to Spain, and I would never trust Spain. And I've made sure, for example, that we have the ability to terminate the agreement if Spain is not performing on its obligations under the agreement, and indeed, not just its obligations under the agreement, the obligation it will have to stop treating Gibraltar as a tax haven and remove us from blacklists once the information starts to flow and the agreement starts to work. But let's be very clear. If you live in Spain, then you must pay tax in Spain. That is the reality. Whether you are Gibraltarian, Norwegian, French, or Armenian. If you live in Spain, that is the place where you must pay tax. If you work somewhere else, you may also have to pay tax in that jurisdiction. So if you are a person who lives in Spain, whether you're British Gibraltarian, or Spanish, and you come into Gibraltar to work, Gibraltar taxes income at source in Gibraltar. If you then live in Spain, at the moment, you're taxed in both locations to the full amount of the tax that is payable. What this agreement also does is it eliminates unilaterally double taxation. So if you have paid tax in Gibraltar on your earnings, you will not pay that amount of tax again in Spain under this agreement. You will pay the difference between the tax rate in Gibraltar and the tax rate in Spain if the tax rate in Spain is higher, and vice versa. There are some people who live in Gibraltar and who work in Spain, a handful. They are presently subject to double taxation. We will give them unilateral relief under this agreement. They will pay tax in Spain on their income, and in Gibraltar they will pay the difference between the tax rate in Spain and Gibraltar, which is likely to be nothing.
So what would you say Gibraltar has gained from this?
Well, I think for Gibraltar, reputationally, this is absolutely important. It's a key step forward in the world recognizing, because Spain is our principal accuser, the world now recognizing that we have an agreement even with them, even with our principal accuser. But in the process of doing so, in the text of the agreement, which I'm very keen for people to see very quickly, there is recognition of the separate and distinct jurisdiction of Gibraltar as a tax authority, autonomous, separate legislative capacity as well, our Gibraltar Parliament and our laws, and indeed in that context the recognition of the existence of the Gibraltarian and of the Gibraltarian Status Act. Now this goes to the core of the question of a homogeneous population, and in the context of the arguments in New York at the United Nations and on self-determination, I think this tax agreement, by a sidewind, will have very profound implications indeed.